The worst moment of my life was supposed to last maybe 10 seconds. Instead, somebody filmed it, added sad violin music, and uploaded it to TikTok for 3 million people to watch. It happened in the middle of Westbridge University's fall festival, right under a stupid arch covered in fairy lights and orange leaves that looked ripped straight out of a Pinterest board titled Romantic College Moments. I should have known the universe was setting me up. "Evan," I said, holding the coffee I bought him with shaking hands, "I really like you. Like, a lot." For one perfect, terrifying second, the entire courtyard went quiet. Music drifted from somewhere near the student center. A couple girls near the cider booth stopped talking. My heart pounded so hard it made my ears ring. Evan stared at me like I'd just confessed to arson. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. Loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Wait," he said, grinning at his friends. "You were serious?" The heat crawling up my neck could have powered the entire East Coast. Yeah," I managed weakly. His friend snorted into his drink. Another guy muttered, "Oh my God," under his breath like this was the greatest thing he'd seen all semester. Evan shook his head slowly, still smiling in that painfully embarrassed way people smile when they're trying not to look cruel. "Noah, come on. Why would I date someone like you?" It felt like the world physically tilted sideways. A few people gasped. Someone behind me whispered, "Dude," but nobody stopped him. Nobody ever stops things like that. The coffee slipped from my fingers and splashed across my sneakers. I just stood there, frozen, while humiliation wrapped around my throat like a tightening wire. Evan noticed the crowd watching and suddenly looked uncomfortable, but it was too late. Way too late. His roommate pulled out his phone. "Bro, this is insane," he laughed. That was the exact moment my social life died. By midnight, the video was everywhere. Someone captioned it, "When the weird quiet guy thinks he has a chance." Another account zoomed in on my face right after Evan rejected me and added dramatic breakup music. Thousands of comments. Thousands. "I'd transfer. Schools. Secondhand embarrassment is killing me. Why did he confess in public?" I spent 2 hours hiding in a bathroom stall in the library reading every single one like a psychopath. Because apparently humiliation becomes addictive after a while. Around comment number 300, I started crying hard enough that I had to shove my sleeve against my mouth to stay quiet. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. You know reading those won't help, right? My entire body jerked. I looked up too fast and nearly dropped my phone. Black boots stopped outside the stall door. Heavy. Still. Familiar. My stomach dropped instantly. Ronan Vale. Of course it had to be him. Even hearing his name around campus made people lower their voices. Ronan wasn't just the bad boy everyone gossiped about online. He was the kind of guy professors avoided arguing with. 6'3", broad shoulders, tattoos disappearing beneath the sleeves of his dark hoodie. A permanent expression like he was one inconvenience away from leaving society entirely. Rumors followed him everywhere. Fights, suspensions, rich family connections nobody fully understood. The terrifying part wasn't the rumors, though. It was the silence that happened whenever he walked into a room. I quickly wiped my face, humiliated all over again. "Were you seriously listening to me cry in a bathroom?" I muttered. "Pretty hard not to," Ronan said calmly. His voice was low, rough around the edges. I unlocked the stall and stepped out carefully. He leaned against the sink counter with his arms crossed, dark eyes fixed on me in the mirror. I hated how aware I suddenly became of everything. My swollen eyes, my red face, the fact I looked like human roadkill. "If you're here to laugh too, get in line," I said quietly. Ronan stared at me for a second too long. Then he said something that made my brain completely stop working. "Date me." I blinked. "What? Fake date me," he repeated. "People will stop laughing at you." And somehow, impossibly, that was even more terrifying than the rejection. There are exactly 3 reasons a guy like Ronan Vale would offer to fake date someone like me. 1. He lost a bet. 2. He was planning to harvest my organs. Or 3. And somehow this felt the most terrifying. He actually meant it. I stared at him in the library bathroom mirror like my brain had completely disconnected from reality. "You want to fake date me?" I repeated slowly. Ronan looked unimpressed by my survival instincts. "That's usually how conversations work, Bennett." "Why?" The word came out embarrassingly small. He shrugged one shoulder beneath his black hoodie. "People stop targeting you if they think you belong to someone dangerous." Belong. My stomach did something deeply unhelpful. That is the most concerning sentence anyone has ever said to me, I muttered. For the first time, Ronan's mouth twitched slightly. Not a smile exactly. More like the idea of one. You want them to leave you alone or not? I should have said no. Any normal person would have said no. But unfortunately, my dignity had already been publicly cremated on social media 12 hours earlier, and Ronan Vale was standing in front of me offering revenge wrapped in 6'3" intimidation and a dangerously calm voice. So instead, I heard myself ask, what's the catch? 1 month, he said immediately. Public dating. Eat lunch with me. Sit with me at events. Don't act weird when I touch you. I nearly choked on oxygen. Touch me. Relax, Ronan said dryly. I'm talking about holding your hand, not eloping in Vegas. Heat rushed into my face anyway. Great. Amazing. My body had chosen the worst possible moment to remember Ronan was objectively attractive. And after 1 month, I asked, we break up. Everyone gets bored. Your humiliation dies. The scary thing was, it actually made sense. Social media only cared about one thing more than embarrassing people. Drama. And nothing on campus was more dramatic than Ronan Vale suddenly having a boyfriend. Fine, I said before courage could leave my body. 1 month. Ronan held out his hand. His fingers were long, tattooed across the knuckles in black ink that disappeared beneath his sleeves. I stared at it for half a second too long before shaking it. His grip was warm, steady. My pulse immediately betrayed me like a snitch. Congratulations, Ronan murmured. Your social life just got rebooted. He wasn't wrong. The next morning, Westbridge University practically exploded. It started at 9:12 a.m. when Ronan walked into the student union with me beside him. Not behind him. Beside him. That detail mattered. Conversations stopped one by one, like somebody lowering volume sliders across the room. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Phones slowly appeared above tables. Oh God. People were recording already. Why is everyone staring? I whispered. Ronan glanced sideways at me. Because they're terrified of me. That's not comforting. It's not supposed to be. Then, before I could mentally prepare, Ronan reached down and casually hooked his fingers through mine. My entire nervous system blue-screened. The reaction around us was immediate. Someone dropped a drink. A girl near the coffee station literally gasped. No freaking way. I caught my own reflection in the window beside us and almost didn't recognize myself. Me, Noah Bennett. The guy who got publicly rejected yesterday, standing hand in hand with the most feared guy on campus today. What even was my life anymore? We barely made it 10 feet before Evan appeared near the cafeteria entrance with 2 of his friends. His eyes landed on our hands first, then widened. Wait, he said slowly. You're dating Ronan? The disbelief in his voice should not have felt as satisfying as it did. I opened my mouth, but Ronan beat me to it. Problem? He asked calmly. Evan shifted immediately under that stare. Everyone did. Ronan didn't raise his voice. Didn't step forward aggressively. Somehow that made it worse. No, Evan muttered. Just surprising. Ronan tilted his head slightly. What's surprising is how comfortable people got humiliating Noah in public. Silence crashed across the hallway. My chest tightened painfully. Nobody had defended me yesterday. Nobody. Ronan's thumb brushed once against the back of my hand. Small. Barely noticeable. But suddenly I couldn't breathe correctly. Evan looked away first. Ronan looked back at me like none of that mattered. Come on, he said quietly. You're late for class. Then he tossed me a black motorcycle helmet like it was the most normal thing in the world. And when the entire student union realized Noah Bennett was climbing onto Ronan Vale's motorcycle with his arms wrapped around the campus menace's waist, the screaming started before the engine even did. By the end of the week, half of Westbridge University thought I was secretly dating a criminal mastermind, and honestly, the evidence was starting to look convincing. It began with the motorcycle video. Someone filmed Ronan helping me onto the back of his black Ducati outside the student union, his hand steady on my waist while I nearly tripped over my own dignity. The clip hit social media within 20 minutes. By dinner, people were editing dramatic music over it like we were starring in some forbidden romance Netflix series. This campus has lost its mind, I muttered, staring at my phone while lying face down across my dorm bed. My roommate Trevor looked deeply entertained. Noah, there are literally girls online calling Ronan Vale your Mafia boyfriend. He is not my Mafia boyfriend. Trevor snorted. That's the part you disagreed with? I threw a pillow at him. Unfortunately, Denying things only made the rumors worse. Everywhere I went, people stared now. Not pitying stares anymore either. Curious ones. Nervous ones. Some students even moved out of my way in the hallway, like Ronan's scary reputation had become contagious through physical proximity. The weirdest part? Ronan kept playing along perfectly. Too perfectly. He'd appear beside me between classes without warning, one hand brushing lightly against my lower back while guiding me through crowded hallways. He carried my coffee once after hearing me complain I had too many books. He even showed up outside my economics lecture leaning against his motorcycle in a dark gray hoodie that probably cost more than my monthly rent. You know this fake boyfriend thing is getting alarmingly believable, right? I asked carefully as I climbed onto the bike behind him. Ronan handed me the spare helmet without looking back. That's usually the goal. The engine rumbled beneath us, deep and smooth like distant thunder. My hands hovered awkwardly near his waist for a second before Ronan reached back, grabbed my wrist gently, and pulled my arm around him himself. You'll fall off otherwise, he said calmly. My heartbeat immediately forgot how to behave. The campus parking lot practically exploded behind us. Oh my God, somebody screamed. He touched his waist. I wanted to evaporate into mist. Ronan just drove away like public chaos followed him daily. Which, honestly, maybe it did. The thing about Ronan was that every answer somehow created 3 new questions. Like the black SUVs. The first time I noticed one was Thursday afternoon outside the library. Blacked out windows. Expensive. Idling quietly near the curb while Ronan stood beside me drinking iced coffee like nothing was unusual. Are we being followed? I whispered. Ronan glanced once toward the SUV. No, that was a very suspicious no. You asked too many questions. Then there were the phone calls. Ronan almost never answered them in front of me, but when he did, his entire expression changed. Colder somehow. Sharper. Tell him I'm handling it, he said once quietly into the phone before hanging up. Another time, I caught a glimpse of a text notification lighting his screen while we studied together in the student center. Payment deadline moved to Monday. My stomach tightened unexpectedly. Payment for what? Before I could ask, Ronan flipped the phone face down. Don't worry about it, he said, which naturally made me worry about it immediately. And then there was the ring. I noticed it during lunch when sunlight flashed briefly across his hand. Thick silver, dark stone in the center. Elegant in an old money way that didn't fit the rest of his intimidating campus menace aesthetic. That ring looks expensive, I said casually. Ronan's fingers curled slightly around his soda cup. Family thing. That sounded incredibly ominous. His mouth twitched faintly. Most things about my family are. Trevor later informed me that nobody at Westbridge actually knew where Ronan's money came from. Some people thought his family owned casinos in Vegas. Others swore they had political connections overseas. One guy claimed Ronan once arrived at school with an actual bodyguard. I laughed at that until Friday night. Because, Friday night, after Ronan picked me up from the campus bookstore, I spotted a man in a black suit standing near the motorcycle watching us from across the street. Earpiece. Broad shoulders. Definitely not a college student. Ronan saw him too. For one brief second, something tense flashed across his face. Gone almost instantly. Get on the bike, Noah, he said quietly. Now. And for the very first time since this fake relationship started, I realized there might be something genuinely dangerous hiding underneath Ronan Vale's terrifying reputation. Fake dating Ronan Vale was supposed to make my life easier. Instead, it turned me into the main character of the most stressful reality show on earth. By Monday morning, people at Westbridge had divided themselves into 2 groups. The first group thought I was secretly living some dangerous Wattpad fantasy. The second group thought I was going to end up emotionally destroyed by the end of the semester. Honestly, both felt possible. I noticed the whispers the second I walked into campus. Heads turning. Phones lifting. Somebody near the bookstore murmured, "That's him." Like I'd suddenly become a cryptid sighting. Ronan, meanwhile, walked beside me with the emotional expression of a glacier. Hands in his hoodie pockets. Dark sunglasses despite the cloudy weather. Completely unaffected by the social hurricane orbiting him. I still didn't understand how one human being could make an entire university nervous just by existing. You know, I muttered as we crossed the quad. Normal fake boyfriends usually buy flowers or something. Flowers die. That sounded deeply threatening. You're overthinking again. The scary thing was he said it without even looking at me. like he already knew me well enough to recognize the signs. That thought stayed in my head longer than it should have. Unfortunately, my temporary emotional crisis got interrupted by Evan Carter and his friends waiting outside the student center like a human jump scare. My stomach tightened immediately. Evan leaned casually against the railing when he spotted us approaching. Too casual. The kind of fake confidence people wear when they know an audience is watching. And of course there was an audience. There was always an audience now. Noah, he called loudly. I kept walking. Mistake. Evan stepped directly into my path. Come on, man. You're seriously still mad? Ronan stopped beside me instantly. Silent. Watching. Evan glanced once toward him before forcing an awkward laugh. I mean, this whole thing is kind of crazy, don't you think? What whole thing? I asked quietly. You and him. Evan gestured vaguely at Ronan like he was discussing an approaching thunderstorm. No offense, dude, but everyone knows this is fake. The crowd nearby got quieter. I hated that feeling instantly. That awful pressure in the air right before humiliation lands again. Evan smiled in that same uncomfortable way he had during the rejection. I just think it's weird you're dragging this out because you got embarrassed. There it was. Sharp. Public. Deliberate. My chest tightened so fast it almost hurt. For half a second, nobody moved. Then Ronan stepped closer beside me. Not aggressively. Not dramatically. Just enough that his shoulder brushed mine, grounding me instantly. You done talking? Ronan asked calmly. Evan blinked. I'm just being honest. No, Ronan said softly. You're trying to save your ego because the guy you publicly humiliated stopped caring about your attention. Complete silence. Even the wind felt quieter somehow. Evan's face reddened immediately. Ronan's voice never changed. That was the terrifying part. He sounded bored. And for future reference, Ronan continued, adjusting the sleeve of his hoodie slowly. If Noah says he doesn't want to talk to you, that conversation ends there. My pulse absolutely lost its mind. Nobody had ever defended me like that before. Not publicly. Not without making it a joke afterward. Evan laughed nervously. Dude, why do you even care? You barely know him. Ronan finally looked at me then. Really looked at me. His expression softened almost invisibly around the edges. That's not your business. The crowd around us practically combusted internally. I could feel it. Hear the frantic typing already happening across campus group chats. Ronan reached down without breaking eye contact with Evan and casually fixed the sleeve of my jacket where it had twisted around my wrist earlier. Small gesture. Gentle. Intimate enough to make my stomach flip upside down. Come on, he murmured quietly to me. You haven't eaten yet. And somehow that hit harder than the public defense. Because it sounded real. As Ronan guided me past the staring crowd with one steady hand against my back, I heard somebody whisper behind us. Oh my God. He actually likes him. The terrifying thing was, I was starting to wonder if they were right too. There should honestly be a scientific study about what prolonged exposure to Ronan Vale does to the human nervous system. Because after 2 weeks of fake dating him, my brain had officially stopped functioning like normal equipment. It started with lunch. Every single day at exactly 12:15, Ronan appeared outside whatever class I was leaving like some terrifyingly attractive cryptid with perfect timing and a motorcycle helmet tucked under one arm. He never texted first. Never announced he was coming. He just showed up. And somehow, every single time, my stupid heart reacted like it was seeing him for the first time. Do you actually materialize out of shadows? I asked one afternoon as he fell into step beside me outside the arts building. Ronan glanced down at me calmly. Would that impress you? A little, yeah. His mouth twitched faintly again. That tiny almost smile was becoming dangerously addictive. Lunch with Ronan had become its own strange routine. We usually sat outside near the edge of campus beneath a huge oak tree overlooking the soccer field where fewer people bothered us. Fewer. Not none. People still stared constantly. Some took pictures when they thought we weren't looking. Others immediately looked away when Ronan noticed them watching. Today, the wind carried the smell of rain across campus, while I poked suspiciously at the sandwich Ronan handed me from a paper bag. Turkey pesto, he said before I could ask. No tomatoes. I blinked. How did you know I hate tomatoes? Ronan unscrewed his water bottle casually. You pick them off everything. My stomach flipped unexpectedly hard. You noticed that? You notice a lot when people matter to you. The words hit me square in the chest. Ronan said things like that sometimes. Calmly. Casually. Like he had no idea they rearranged my internal organs afterward. Before I could recover, a blonde girl from my communications class approached our table with a nervous smile. "Hi, Noah," she said brightly. "Do you maybe want to join our study group tonight?" Her eyes flicked quickly toward Ronan before darting away again. Smart survival instinct. I started. "He's busy tonight," Ronan said smoothly before I could answer. The girl blinked. "Right. Sorry." Then she practically fled. I stared at him after she disappeared. "Did you just socially eliminate my chance to make friends?" Ronan looked completely unbothered. "You already have friends. Trevor barely counts as emotionally stable." "Still counts." I narrowed my eyes. Was that jealousy? No, that was suspiciously fast. Ronan took a sip of water instead of answering, which honestly felt like an answer. The rain finally started during my evening class around 7. Heavy drops streaked against the windows while my professor droned on about economic policy like a sleep paralysis demon. By the time class ended, campus looked washed silver beneath the streetlights. Most students rushed across the quad with umbrellas and hoodies over their heads. I stepped outside and froze. Ronan leaned against his motorcycle near the curb, dark hoodie damp at the shoulders, black helmet resting against one knee. Waiting. My chest tightened immediately. "You've been standing in the rain?" I asked as I hurried over. "For like 20 minutes? 37, he corrected calmly. "Your class ran late." "Ronan." He shrugged one shoulder, like standing alone in cold rain for over half an hour was perfectly normal behavior. "You hate walking home when it storms." My breath caught slightly. "How do you know that?" For the first time in days, Ronan hesitated. "Tiny. Barely visible. But there. You walked 3 extra blocks during the last storm to avoid the flooded sidewalk near your dorm," he said quietly. "You looked cold." Silence stretched strangely between us. Rain tapped softly against the pavement. Somewhere nearby, thunder rolled low across the city skyline. "You remember stuff like that?" I asked before I could stop myself. Ronan looked at me then with that same unreadable expression that always made my pulse stumble. Gentle somehow beneath all the sharp edges. "I remember everything about you, Noah." My heartbeat forgot how to function. Completely. Before I could think of a response that wouldn't embarrass me for the rest of my natural life, Ronan reached up quietly and adjusted the hood of my jacket higher around my face to shield me from the rain. His fingers brushed my temple for half a second. Warm. Careful. Devastating. Then his phone buzzed. Ronan glanced at the screen, and the softness disappeared instantly. His jaw tightened. Coldness sliding back into place like armor. I only caught a glimpse before he locked the screen again. One final warning. Payment due Sunday. My stomach dropped. Ronan slid the phone back into his pocket smoothly and handed me the spare helmet like nothing had happened. But for the first time since meeting him, I realized whatever secret he was hiding wasn't staying buried much longer. There are 2 kinds of panic in life. The first kind is normal panic, like forgetting an assignment deadline or accidentally replying all to an email. The second kind is realizing you agreed to attend a luxury fundraising gala with Ronan Vale after owning exactly 1 decent blazer and 0 emotional stability. "Why are there valet attendants?" I whispered as Ronan's motorcycle rolled toward the massive downtown hotel, glowing gold against the night sky. "Because rich people hate parking themselves," Ronan replied calmly. That answer did absolutely nothing to help my nerves. Westbridge University's annual charity gala was apparently a huge deal. Faculty donors, board members, local politicians, wealthy alumni. Basically every powerful adult in the city packed into one ballroom beneath crystal chandeliers and enough polished marble to bankrupt me emotionally. I climbed off the motorcycle carefully, adjusting the sleeves of my dark navy blazer while trying not to look like a confused hostage. Ronan removed his helmet beside me, and for one dangerous second, I forgot how breathing worked again. Black dress shirt, tailored charcoal coat, silver watch glinting beneath the hotel lights. His dark hair pushed back slightly from the right. He looked less like a college student and more like the kind of man who ruined lives in expensive boardrooms. "You clean up terrifyingly well," I muttered. Ronan's eyes flicked toward me slowly. "You're staring. That sounds like a you problem." A tiny smirk appeared. Gone instantly. Somehow worse for my heart than a full smile would have been. The second we approached the entrance, things got weird. Really weird. The security guard standing outside straightened almost immediately when they saw Ronan. Not subtly either. One of them even touched his earpiece, while another stepped aside without checking our invitations. "Good evening, Mr. Vale," the older guard said respectfully. "Mr. Vale. Not Ronan. Not sir exactly, but close enough that my stomach tightened." Ronan gave a small nod like this happened constantly. I blinked at him as we walked inside. "Do you know the security team here?" Something like that. That answer was suspiciously Batman-coded. He ignored me completely, which honestly felt suspicious too. The ballroom looked unreal. Warm golden lights reflected off towering windows overlooking the city skyline, while a string quartet played near the stage. Students wandered between wealthy donors balancing sparkling drinks and fake confidence. I immediately wanted to turn around and evaporate into the nearest decorative plant. "Relax," Ronan murmured quietly beside me. "You're doing fine." I looked like someone who accidentally wandered in from the parking garage. Ronan glanced down at me. "You look good." My brain stopped. Fully. Completely. Meanwhile, the rest of the room had started reacting to Ronan's presence in ways that made less and less sense the longer I watched. Older businessmen greeted him first, not the other way around. A gray-haired university trustee shook his hand with visible respect. One woman wearing diamonds that probably cost more than my tuition smiled warmly and said, "Your father asked about you last week." Ronan's expression cooled instantly. "That's unfortunate." She laughed nervously like she wasn't entirely sure if he was joking. I stared after her once she walked away. "Okay," I whispered. "What exactly is your family?" Ronan picked up 2 sparkling waters from a passing tray and handed me one. "Complicated." That is officially the most terrifying possible answer. Before he could respond, a man in an expensive navy suit approached from across the ballroom. Mid-40s. Sharp silver tie. The kind of face that looked permanently disappointed in humanity. The entire energy around Ronan changed the second he appeared. Subtle, but immediate. "Ronan," the man said evenly. Ronan's jaw tightened slightly. "Marcus." My eyes moved between them. The man glanced briefly toward me, assessing. Coldly. "So this is him." "Excuse me?" Ronan stepped slightly closer beside me before I could process that sentence. "Protective. Instinctive. Don't start," he said quietly. Marcus ignored him. "Your father won't like this." Silence. Heavy and dangerous. I felt it instantly. Ronan's expression became unreadable. "I don't particularly care." Marcus's eyes flicked toward me again. "You should, considering what your last mistake cost the family." My stomach dropped. Family. Cost. Mistake. Before I could even begin connecting those words together, another black-suited man suddenly hurried toward Marcus from the edge of the ballroom, looking alarmed. "Sir," he muttered urgently, "there's a problem downstairs." Marcus cursed under his breath and turned immediately, but not before saying one final thing to Ronan that made cold creep slowly down my spine. "If he finds out you brought the boy here," Marcus said quietly, "you know what happens next." Then he walked away, and for the first time since meeting Ronan Vale, I saw something genuinely dangerous flash behind his eyes. The worst part about secrets is that your brain always notices them before your heart is ready to admit something's wrong. I spent the rest of the gala pretending everything was normal while my thoughts spiraled like a washing machine full of knives. Who was Marcus? What family? What mistake? And why did security guards treat Ronan like he owned the entire building? Ronan barely spoke after that conversation. He stayed close beside me the entire evening, one hand occasionally brushing my back as if checking I was still there, but the atmosphere around him had changed. Tighter somehow. Controlled. Like every smile cost effort. Around 10 o'clock, I escaped to the rooftop terrace for air before my brain overheated completely. Cold wind whipped across the city skyline, while rain clouds gathered above the glowing buildings downtown. I gripped the balcony railing and tried not to feel stupid for caring this much. Because that was the real problem, wasn't it? Somewhere between fake handholding and late-night motorcycle rides, Ronan had stopped feeling fake to me. The terrace door opened softly behind me. Of course it was him. Ronan stepped outside, dark coat shifting in the wind, eyes immediately finding me like they always did. "You disappeared," he said quietly. "Needed air." "Noah." The way he said my name made my chest ache. I laughed once under my breath. Tired. Frustrated. "You know, it's honestly impressive how every answer you give somehow creates 5 more questions." Ronan leaned against the railing beside me. Silent. Waiting. Rain began lightly tapping against the rooftop tiles. Who was Marcus? I finally asked. Family advisor. And your family is what exactly? He didn't answer fast enough. That was answer enough. My stomach tightened. Ronan. Thunder rolled softly in the distance. He exhaled slowly through his nose before speaking. My grandfather founded Vale International. I blinked. The Vale International? Ronan nodded once. My brain genuinely stopped functioning for a second. Vale International wasn't just rich. It was terrifying rich. Hotels, shipping companies, real estate, tech investments. Their name was on skyscrapers downtown. Trevor once called them capitalism with private security. You're joking, I whispered. I wish I was. The rain started falling harder around us. Cold drops dampened Ronan's dark hair while city lights blurred gold behind him. Somehow he looked even more unreal standing there. Like he belonged on magazine covers instead of sitting with me beneath campus trees, eating sandwiches. So what? I said quietly, stepping back from the railing. You're some billionaire heir pretending to be a college student? I'm a college student. That's not the part I'm struggling with, Ronan. He looked away briefly toward the skyline. My family owns things. People care about that more than they should. I laughed again, sharper this time. You mean the black SUVs? The security guards? The creepy men in suits acting like your royalty? Ronan's jaw tightened. Noah. No. Seriously, what is happening right now? Because I thought you were just some scary guy with tattoos and emotional problems. I do have emotional problems. That is not helping. For 1 second, I almost smiled. Then I remembered Marcus's voice. Your father won't like this. The boy. The family. Suddenly, every moment between us felt different. Like I'd been walking through a story where everybody knew the plot except me. How long were you planning to hide it? I asked quietly. Ronan didn't answer immediately. Rain soaked through my jacket collar while wine swept across the rooftop. I didn't want you looking at me differently. Too late. That hurt more than I expected. You should have trusted me enough to tell me. I was trying to protect you. From what? The silence that followed terrified me more than any answer could have. Ronan's eyes darkened slightly. My family is complicated. Stop saying that. My voice cracked unexpectedly. You keep saying complicated like it explains anything. Ronan stepped closer instinctively when he heard the crack in my voice. Noah, don't. I moved back immediately. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly at that. Pain. Tiny. Real. This was supposed to be fake, I whispered. And somehow I'm the only person who forgot that. Rain poured harder between us now, soaking through my sleeves, dripping from Ronan's dark hair onto the rooftop concrete. He looked like he wanted to say something. Something important. Instead, his phone rang sharply through the storm. Ronan glanced at the screen, and every trace of warmth disappeared from his face instantly. Cold. Dangerous. Controlled. I have to take this, he said quietly. Then he walked a few feet away and answered in a low voice I could barely hear over the rain. But I did catch one sentence. No, Ronan said sharply. You are not touching Noah. And suddenly, standing alone on that rooftop beneath the storm, I realized whatever world Ronan belonged to had just become dangerous enough to scare even him. For the next 3 days, I became very committed to the emotionally mature strategy known as avoiding Ronan Vale at all costs, which was difficult considering he apparently had a supernatural ability to find me anywhere on campus. Library. He appeared beside my table with coffee. Student union? Somehow already sitting in my usual spot. Outside economics class, leaning against the wall waiting like a 6'3" stress response in designer boots. It would have been easier if he acted angry, or defensive, or cold. Instead, Ronan looked at me like I was something fragile he was trying not to scare away. And that was so much worse. By Thursday, the weather had turned brutally cold. Gray skies, sharp wind cutting across campus hard enough to make everyone walk faster. I spent most of the afternoon pretending to study in the library while secretly rereading the same paragraph 12 times because my brain refused to function properly anymore. Around 7 that night, my head started pounding behind my eyes. Trevor took one look at me sprawled across my notes and said, "Congratulations. You're either dying or finally having emotions." "I hate you," I mumbled weakly. "Drink water." By the time I left the library, freezing rain had started falling again. Perfect. Exactly what my emotional breakdown needed. I pulled my hoodie tighter and headed toward my dorm with all the energy of a Victorian orphan wandering into the wilderness. Then headlights rolled slowly beside me near the curb. Black motorcycle. Black helmet. Of course. Ronan lowered the visor slightly and looked at me for a long moment. Get on. I'm still mad at you, I informed him. You look sick. That's unrelated. Ronan reached over quietly and pressed the back of his hand against my forehead before I could stop him. Warm fingers. Gentle. Touch. Completely unfair. His expression tightened immediately. Noah, don't use that tone on me. You have a fever. I have emotional damage. You're shivering. Unfortunately, I was. Violently. Ronan sighed once beneath his breath before taking off his own coat and draping it over my shoulders despite the freezing rain soaking through his shirt almost instantly afterward. Ronan, helmet. You can't solve every problem by putting me on your motorcycle. Watch me. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in Ronan's apartment wrapped in the softest blanket known to mankind, while trying not to visibly panic over the fact that his kitchen looked like a luxury magazine ad. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown. Dark wood. Modern lighting. The kind of place where rich people probably discuss stock markets while drinking sparkling water that cost $18. You live here? I asked weakly. Ronan handed me a mug of tea. Unfortunately, this apartment has better healthcare than I do. His mouth twitched faintly before he sat beside me on the couch. Not too close. Just close enough that warmth settled quietly into the space between us. Rain tapped softly against the giant windows while the city glowed silver beneath the storm outside. For a while, neither of us spoke. It should have felt awkward. Instead, it felt strangely peaceful. You know, I said eventually, staring down into my tea. Most people would have run screaming after finding out you're basically billionaire royalty. Most people usually do. Something about the way he said it made me look up. Ronan stared out toward the skyline. Expression unreadable again. Lonely somehow beneath all that control. When people hear my last name, he said quietly, they stop seeing me as a person. My chest tightened unexpectedly. Ronan, they see business deals. Expectations. Money. He laughed softly once without humor. Or they see someone dangerous. The rain outside grew heavier. I watched him carefully in the dim apartment light. The sharp edges everyone feared suddenly looked exhausting instead. Like armor he'd been carrying too long. You know what I see? I asked quietly. Ronan turned toward me. Slowly. A guy who waits in the rain for people. Silence stretched between us. Warm. Fragile. His eyes softened in a way that made my heartbeat stumble painfully hard. Noah, he said softly, like my name meant something dangerous to him too. My pulse immediately forgot how to function. Again. Then Ronan reached up slowly and brushed a damp strand of hair away from my forehead with careful fingers. No teasing. No fake flirting. Just quiet tenderness that felt far too real. You should sleep, he murmured. I should have moved away. Instead, I leaned unconsciously into his touch for half a second before realizing what I'd done. Ronan noticed. Of course he noticed. The look in his eyes afterward nearly destroyed me. Then his phone buzzed sharply on the coffee table. The warmth vanished from his expression instantly. Cold tension replaced it like a switch flipping behind his eyes. Ronan glanced at the screen and stood up immediately. Stay here, he said quietly. My stomach dropped. Why? He didn't answer right away. That terrified me more than anything. Then someone started pounding hard against the apartment door. The pounding at Ronan's apartment door turned out to be security. Actual security. Suits. Earpieces. The whole terrifying corporate action movie package. Apparently someone had spotted paparazzi outside the building after the Gala photos hit social media. Because naturally my life had evolved from embarrassing college disaster into accidental celebrity scandal. You have paparazzi? I whispered from beneath the blanket while one of the suited men spoke quietly with Ronan near the front door. Ronan rubbed a tired hand over the back of his neck. Sometimes. That is not a normal answer. Nothing about my life is normal. Weirdly, that stopped feeling intimidating after a while. The more time I spent around Ronan, the more I realized the scary reputation everyone obsessed over was only one piece of him. Yes, he was intense, quiet, capable of silencing an entire room with one look. But he was also the guy who remembered I hated tomatoes. The guy who waited outside in freezing rain because he knew I disliked walking home alone at night. The guy currently making me soup at 1 a.m. while wearing sweatpants and glasses that absolutely nobody at Westbridge knew existed. You wear glasses? I asked from the kitchen counter stool, genuinely offended he'd hidden this information from me. Ronan glanced up from the stove. Sometimes, this changes everything. You're dramatic. You look like a hot librarian. Ronan nearly dropped the spoon. I stared at him triumphantly. Oh my God, I whispered. I made Ronan Vale blush. No, you didn't. Your ears are literally red. Drink your tea. Somehow after that night, things between us shifted quietly into something softer. Easier. The tension never disappeared exactly. If anything, it got worse. But now it came wrapped in familiarity. Inside jokes. Comfortable silence. The kind of closeness that sneaks up on you slowly until suddenly someone else's presence starts feeling like part of your daily routine. By the next week, the entire campus had fully committed to shipping us. There were edits online now. Actual edits. Slow-motion videos of Ronan putting his hand on my back set to romantic music. Somebody made a compilation titled The Noah Bennett Protection Program. Trevor watched it during breakfast while I considered transferring schools internationally. The comments are insane, he announced cheerfully. Listen to this one. He looks at Noah like he'd destroy governments for him. I nearly choked on my coffee. Unfortunately, the comments weren't entirely wrong. Ronan had developed this habit of looking at me like I was the only thing in the room worth paying attention to. It happened constantly now. Across classrooms. During lunch. On the motorcycle at stoplights when I'd catch him glancing back toward me for half a second too long. And the terrifying part? I'd started doing it too. One Friday afternoon, we ended up sprawled across the grass near the campus fountain while students rushed around preparing for midterms. Ronan lay beside me in the sunlight, one arm folded behind his head while I pretended to study economics and mostly failed. You've read the same sentence 4 times, Ronan said without opening his eyes. I'm building suspense. You're building brain damage. I nudged his shoulder lightly with my sneaker. Ronan opened one eye slowly. Violence now. You deserve it for being naturally good at statistics. You cried over percentages last night. That was between me and God. Ronan laughed softly. Actually laughed. Low and warm and devastatingly real. My heart completely folded in on itself. Around us, 3 girls sitting near the fountain openly stared. One of them whispered, "They're literally married," while another aggressively typed something into her phone. We should start charging people for observing us in the wild, I muttered. Could pay your tuition. Rude. Ronan's fingers brushed lazily against mine in the grass beside us. Small touch. Barely there. But he didn't move away afterward. Neither did I. The world suddenly felt strangely quiet. Warm sunlight. Autumn leaves blowing across campus sidewalks. Ronan beside me looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen him before. Happy almost. That should have scared me sooner than it did. Because happiness in my life had a habit of arriving right before disaster. It happened that night around midnight. My phone buzzed violently against my nightstand while I was half asleep. Trevor sat upright across the room immediately. "Noah," he said carefully, "you need to see this." My stomach dropped before I even unlocked the screen. Campus gossip accounts had exploded with screenshots. Fake text messages. Fake photos. Dozens of edited posts claiming Ronan was only dating me because of a financial deal arranged by his family. One message read, "Keep him distracted until the merger is finalized." Another said, "He's emotionally attached already. That makes this easier." My hands started shaking instantly. Then I saw the final post. A blurry photo of Ronan leaving a black SUV beside a headline that made cold flood straight through my chest. The Vale heir's boyfriend is just a paid cover-up. Humiliation feels different the second time around. The first time, it's shock. The second time, your body remembers exactly how to break apart. By 8 the next morning, the fake screenshots had spread across all of Westbridge University. Every hallway conversation. Stopped when I walked by. Phones tilted downward too slowly. People stared with that same fascinated cruelty humans always get when they think someone's life is collapsing in real time. Only this time, they weren't laughing because I got rejected. They were laughing because apparently I was a gold digger who manipulated a billionaire heir for attention. This cannot be happening, I whispered, gripping my phone so tightly my hands hurt. Trevor looked furious beside me in the dorm room. The screenshots are fake. I know they're fake. Then Ronan needs to say something immediately. That part lodged painfully in my chest. Because Ronan hadn't answered any of my texts since last night. Not one. Every message sat unread. My stomach twisted harder every hour. By the time I reached campus, the gossip had evolved into something uglier. Did you see the payment screenshots? I heard his family paid Noah to act like Ronan's boyfriend. No wonder he switched up so fast after getting rejected. Honestly, kind of smart. Smart, right? Because apparently getting publicly humiliated twice in one semester was all part of my genius business strategy. I kept my head down as I crossed the quad, but whispers followed anyway. Some subtle, some absolutely not. Gold digger. Clout chaser. Poor Ronan. That last one almost made me laugh. Poor Ronan. Ronan, who lived in a penthouse and had private security. Meanwhile, I was one unexpected dentist appointment away from financial ruin. Unfortunately, the universe wasn't done ruining my life yet. Because standing outside the student union surrounded by half the business department was Ronan himself. Dark coat, sharp jawline, calm expression, looking devastatingly beautiful while my entire emotional stability caught fire. The crowd around him noticed me immediately. Silence spread outward in waves. My pulse started hammering so hard it made my ears ring. Ronan looked up the second I appeared. Relief flashed across his face so quickly I almost thought I imagined it. Then someone near the stairs spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Hey Noah," a guy called mockingly. "How much are the Vale family paying you these days?" Laughter scattered through the crowd. My throat tightened instantly. Not again. God, not again. I felt every eye on me. Waiting. Watching. Recording probably. Across from me, Ronan went perfectly still. "Answer him," another voice said. "Were the screenshots real? Did you fake the whole relationship? Did you use him for money?" Questions crashed from every direction now. Loud. Sharp. Endless. I looked at Ronan desperately for half a second. "Say something. Please." Ronan's jaw tightened. His eyes locked on mine across the crowd. And then, nothing. He stayed silent. 1 second. 2. 3. It shouldn't have mattered. But those few seconds cracked something open inside my chest so painfully I could barely breathe. Because in humiliation, silence always feels like agreement. The crowd noticed too. Murmurs spread instantly. "Oh my God. Wait, so it's true. That's insane." My vision blurred embarrassingly fast. I swallowed hard and stepped backward before anyone could see how badly that silence hurt me. "Noah," Ronan said suddenly. But it was too late. Something cold had already settled beneath my ribs. "You should have just told me," I said quietly. The crowd around us went dead silent again, trying to hear every word. Ronan stepped toward me immediately. "The screenshots are fake." "Then why didn't you say that?" My voice cracked slightly on the last word. I hated that. Hated it. Ronan's expression shifted instantly when he heard it. Pain. Real pain. "Because if I denied it publicly," he said quietly, "my family would know they got to you." I stared at him in disbelief. "So your solution was to let everyone think I sold myself for money?" "Noah, listen to me." "No," my laugh came out shaky and awful. "I am so tired of feeling stupid around you." Ronan moved closer again instinctively, like he physically couldn't stop himself from trying to fix this. "You are not stupid. Then stop making me feel like the last person to understand what's happening in my own life." Rain started falling lightly across the quad. Cold drops hitting pavement. Nobody moved. Nobody even pretended not to watch anymore. Ronan looked at me like he wanted to say something dangerous. Something honest. Instead, his phone rang sharply in his pocket. He ignored it immediately. It rang again. Then again. The screen lit up briefly in his hand before he silenced it. And my stomach dropped when I saw the caller ID. Vale Estate. Ronan's entire expression hardened. "I can explain everything," he said quietly. But standing there in front of half the university while whispers swallowed me alive all over again, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't sure I could survive believing him twice. By Friday morning, Westbridge University had fully transformed into a live-streamed disaster zone. The fake screenshots were everywhere. Campus blogs, TikTok edits, anonymous confession pages. Somebody even printed one of the fake messages and taped it onto the student union bulletin board like we were starring in a low-budget soap opera sponsored by emotional trauma. I stopped checking my phone sometime around 2 a.m. because every notification felt like another tiny public execution. Trevor wanted me to stay in the dorm. "Seriously, Noah," he said while pacing beside my desk. "People are insane right now." But hiding felt worse somehow, like admitting they were right. So I went to campus anyway. Mistake. The second I stepped onto the quad, I knew something was wrong. Too many people gathered near the fountain. Too much whispering. Phones already recording. My stomach dropped instantly. Then I saw the giant screen. Someone had connected a projector near the student center stairs. Across it flashed the fake screenshots beside a massive caption in bold red letters. Dating a billionaire for money? Classy Noah. Laughter scattered through the crowd. My vision blurred immediately. Not again. God, not again. A guy near the front smirked when he saw me freeze. Hey Noah, he called loudly. Did you charge hourly, or was it a package deal? More laughter. My chest caved inward painfully. I turned instinctively to leave before anyone could see how badly I was shaking. Then the entire crowd suddenly went silent. Not quieter. Silent. Like somebody hit mute on the world. I knew before I even turned around. Ronan. He walked through the crowd slowly in a black coat dark enough to blend into the storm clouds rolling overhead. Students physically moved out of his path without being asked. Fear spread outward around him in visible waves. But he wasn't looking at anyone else. Only me. His expression when he reached the bottom of the stairs nearly wrecked me completely. Furious. Not at me. Never at me. Who put this up? Ronan asked quietly. Nobody answered. He stepped closer to the screen, eyes cold enough to freeze the entire quad. I asked a question. One of the business majors near the projector laughed nervously. Relax, man. People are just joking around. Ronan looked at him once. That was all it took. The guy immediately stopped smiling. Take it down, Ronan said. Calm. Controlled. Terrifying. Or what? Somebody muttered from the crowd. Wrong choice. Ronan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. A few quick taps. Then suddenly every screen on the projector changed. Gasps exploded around the quad. New files appeared. Security footage. Timestamps. Editing software logs. IP addresses. Dozens of receipts exposing exactly who created the fake screenshots. Names included. Faces included. Including Evan Carter. My breath caught painfully. Evan stood near the back of the crowd, looking like all the blood drained from his body. The screenshots were fabricated 3 nights ago, Ronan said evenly, voice carrying across the silent quad. By 3 students attempting to profit off harassment and online traffic. The crowd erupted instantly. Wait, what? Oh my God, that's insane. Evan stepped forward quickly, panicked. Ronan, come on. It was supposed to be a joke. A joke. Ronan repeated softly. Dangerous. You publicly humiliated Noah once already. Apparently that wasn't enough for you. Evan swallowed hard. I didn't think. No, Ronan cut in quietly. You didn't. The silence afterward felt massive. Heavy. Rain began falling softly over the quad again, cold drops streaking across the projector lights, while students stood frozen beneath the storm. Ronan turned then. Not toward Evan. Toward me. His expression changed instantly the second our eyes met. Softer. Real. Every ounce of anger melted into something that hurt to look at. Directly. Noah, he said quietly, stepping closer through the rain. My heartbeat completely lost control. I should have protected you sooner. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Ronan stopped directly in front of me while rain dampened his dark hair and coat. I let my family convince me silence would keep you safe, he said softly enough that somehow the entire quad still heard every word. But all it did was hurt you. My throat tightened painfully. Ronan, he shook his head slightly. No, you deserve the truth. The wind swept cold rain across the crowd while Ronan looked at me like there was nobody else in the world worth seeing. The relationship stopped being fake for me a long time ago. Complete silence. Then somebody audibly gasped behind us. Ronan never looked away from me. I remember the first time I saw you, he continued quietly. You were sitting alone outside the library feeding pieces of your sandwich to birds because you thought nobody noticed. My chest cracked wide open. I noticed. Rain dripped from his lashes as he stepped even closer. And somewhere along the way, protecting you stopped feeling like an arrangement. His voice lowered slightly. Warmer. More dangerous somehow because of how honest it sounded. It started feeling like the most important thing in my life. The crowd behind us practically exploded into chaos, but it sounded far away now. Distant. Because Ronan Vale, the terrifying billionaire heir everyone feared, was looking at me like I was something precious enough to destroy entire worlds for. Then, right there in front of the entire university, Ronan gently took my shaking hand in his, and said the words that completely shattered whatever was left of my ability to think clearly. I'm done pretending this isn't real. For exactly 12 hours after Ronan confessed in front of the entire university, I forgot what fear felt like, which should have worried me immediately because happiness in my life apparently came with a countdown timer attached. The videos from the quad spread everywhere overnight. Millions of views. Comments exploding across every platform imaginable. The way he looks at him? This is better than any romance movie. Ronan Vale publicly choosing violence for his boyfriend is my new religion. Trevor spent breakfast reading dramatic comments aloud while I hid my face in my hoodie and reconsidered every life choice that brought me here. Meanwhile, Ronan sat beside me in complete calm like he hadn't detonated the internet with one emotional confession. His knee brushed mine beneath the table once. Small. Familiar now. Dangerous to my sanity. You're smiling, Trevor accused suddenly. I am not. You literally look like someone kissed your soul. Ronan took a sip of coffee without looking up. That's dramatic. You're one to talk, Trevor shot back. You basically gave a billionaire romance monologue in the rain. Heat climbed violently into my face. Ronan's mouth twitched faintly beside me. Then his phone rang. Everything changed instantly. I felt it before he even looked at the screen. The warmth disappeared from his expression like someone flipping off a light switch. Cold tension settled across his shoulders. Controlled. Sharp. Familiar in the worst way. Ronan stood slowly from the table. I need to take this. My stomach dropped immediately. 20 minutes later, a black SUV pulled onto campus. Then another behind it. Students started whispering before the engines even shut off. The men stepping out weren't security guards this time. These men looked richer somehow. Colder. Expensive coats. Silver cufflinks. The kind of people who probably discussed billion-dollar mergers over lunch. One older man stepped from the center SUV last. Tall. Dark gray hair streaked with silver. Perfect posture. He didn't raise his voice or move quickly, but the entire atmosphere around him shifted the second he appeared. Ronan went completely still beside me. That's your father, I realized quietly. Ronan didn't answer, which was answer enough. The man's eyes landed on me first. Assessing. Detached. Like he was evaluating damage after a storm. Ronan, he said evenly. We're leaving. Nobody around us even pretended not to stare anymore. Students crowded near the fountain watching like this was the season finale of campus drama. Ronan's jaw tightened. I'm not going anywhere. You've embarrassed this family enough. The words hit harder than they should have. Ronan's father barely glanced at me when he continued speaking. The board has spent all morning containing this scandal. Scandal. My chest tightened painfully. There it was. The reminder that no matter how real things felt between us, people like his family would always see me as a problem to clean up. He's not a scandal, Ronan said quietly. His father finally looked directly at him. This relationship ends now. Silence crashed across the quad. Even the wind felt frozen. Ronan's expression hardened instantly. No, the single word landed like thunder. His father's eyes narrowed slightly. You are heir to Vale International. There are expectations attached to that. Then lower your expectations. A few students actually gasped nearby. I stood frozen beside Ronan while my heartbeat pounded painfully against my ribs. His father's voice turned colder. Everything you have exists because of this family. Ronan laughed softly once. No humor in it at all. Everything I have came with conditions. Ronan. No, for the first time since I'd met him, Ronan sounded genuinely angry. Not cold. Not controlled. Angry. You don't get to decide who matters to me. His father stepped closer. You are throwing away your future over a college relationship. Something inside my chest cracked hearing that. Because despite everything, part of me still believed Ronan would eventually choose them. His family. His power. His world. Why wouldn't he? People like Ronan Vale didn't sacrifice empires for boys like me. Right? Then Ronan turned toward me fully. In front of everyone. Students. Faculty. Security. His father. The entire world suddenly narrowed to the look in his eyes. Steady. Certain. Real. Noah, he said softly, look at me. I did. And whatever he saw in my face must have hurt him because his expression gentled instantly. I spent my entire life being told what I'm allowed to want, he said quietly. What I'm allowed to feel. Who I'm supposed to become. The quad had gone completely silent again. Every single person listening. And for the first time in my life, Ronan continued. stepping closer until his hand found mine naturally, instinctively. I found someone who makes me feel like a person instead of an obligation. My vision blurred embarrassingly fast. Ronan intertwined our fingers carefully before looking back at his father. So if choosing Noah costs me the company, he said calmly, then I'll walk away. Complete silence. Shock rippled visibly across the crowd. Even his father looked stunned for one brief second. My breath caught painfully. Ronan. He squeezed my hand gently without looking away from me. I'm done letting other people decide who gets to matter in my life. And standing there in the middle of campus with the entire world watching him choose me over everything he'd ever been raised to protect, I realized this was no longer a fake relationship that accidentally became real. This was love, raw and terrifying and powerful enough to bring a dynasty to its knees. People talk a lot about life-changing moments like they arrive with fireworks or dramatic music in the background. But honestly, the moment that changed my life forever happened quietly 3 days later while Ronan Vale stood barefoot in his kitchen making pancakes at 2 in the morning because I said I couldn't sleep. These are shaped weird on purpose, Ronan informed me seriously while flipping something that looked vaguely like the state of Texas. I stared across the kitchen island in disbelief. You're worth billions of dollars, and this is the best pancake technology your family could buy? Ronan glanced up slowly. Careful. I can still ruin your GPA. Threatening me with academic violence isn't romantic. It wasn't supposed to be romantic. The terrifying thing was, everything with him felt romantic now. Even this. The soft apartment lighting. Rain tapping gently against the windows again. Ronan in gray sweatpants and a black t-shirt that pushed slightly up his forearms while he cooked. Somewhere along the way, the sharp edges around him had stopped looking dangerous to me. They started looking tired instead. Human. Safe. Westbridge had calmed down after the confrontation with his father, mostly because nobody knew what to do after watching billionaire heir Ronan Vale publicly choose his chaotic fake boyfriend over an actual corporate empire. Some students acted weird around us now. Others acted aggressively supportive. Trevor had started referring to Ronan as our emotionally repressed Disney prince. Meanwhile, the internet completely lost its mind. Hashtag Ronan and Noah trended for almost 48 hours. There were edits, interviews, think pieces. One economics professor accidentally called us an excellent example of market disruption through emotional investment. Ronan banned Trevor from explaining that joke ever again. But beneath all the chaos, things between us had become startlingly simple. We studied together, ate lunch together, fell asleep during movie nights on opposite ends of Ronan's couch, only to wake up somehow tangled beneath the same blanket by morning. Sometimes Ronan still got quiet after calls from his family. Sometimes I still panicked whenever campus gossip accounts posted anything new. Healing, apparently, wasn't linear. But now when things hurt, we hurt beside each other instead of alone. That changed everything. You're staring again, Ronan said from the stove. You're making pancakes shaped like legal confusion. And yet you're smiling. I hated that he always noticed everything. Ronan carried 2 plates over before sitting beside me at the counter. Close enough that our knees brushed naturally now. Comfortable. Familiar. Real. My grandfather officially removed me from the board succession this morning, he said casually before taking a bite of pancake. I nearly inhaled syrup directly into my lungs. Ronan. He handed me a napkin calmly. You're dramatic before caffeine. You got disinherited and you're acting like someone canceled your gym membership. Ronan shrugged slightly. I expected it. My chest tightened painfully. Are you okay? For a second, Ronan didn't answer. He looked down at his hands resting loosely near mine on the counter. The silver family ring still gleamed against his finger beneath the kitchen light. Then quietly, honestly, he said, I think I am for the first time in a long time. Something warm cracked open inside my chest. Ronan looked up then, eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. My whole life, people wanted something from me, he said quietly. Money, power, connections. His thumb brushed lightly against mine on the counter. Tiny touch. Huge impact. You were the first person who looked at me like I was just Ronan. My throat tightened immediately. You are just Ronan. He stared at me for a long moment after that. Quiet. Intense. Like he was memorizing something important. Then slowly, Ronan reached into the pocket of his sweatpants and pulled out a folded piece of paper. My stomach dropped instantly in recognition. The fake dating contract. The original 1-month agreement we made in the library bathroom that somehow turned into this impossible, life-altering thing between us. Ronan placed it gently on the counter between us. Technically, he murmured, our contract expires tomorrow. The room suddenly felt very still. Rain against glass. Warm kitchen lights. My heartbeat trying to physically escape my body. Yeah, I said softly. Ronan looked at me carefully, almost nervous, which was deeply unfair considering he usually carried himself like a man capable of buying small countries. So, he said quietly, we could end it. My chest hurt instantly. Ronan noticed. Of course he noticed. His expression softened immediately before he reached forward, took the paper contract in both hands, and slowly tore it straight down the middle. Then again, and again, tiny scraps drifting across the counter like snow. Or, Ronan said softly, eyes locked on mine, we could stop pretending this was temporary. My heart folded in on itself. Ronan Vale, I whispered shakily. Are you trying to ask me to be your actual boyfriend? I think I've been asking for a while now. I laughed before I could stop myself. Quiet. Emotional. A little overwhelmed around the edges. Ronan watched me like the sound meant something precious to him. Then he reached over carefully, brushing his fingers through mine with that same steady gentleness that had ruined my life in the best possible way. Outside, the storm finally started clearing above the city skyline. Golden morning light slowly spilled through the windows across the kitchen floor while Ronan sat beside me looking calmer than the feared heir to a billion-dollar empire had any right to look. And somewhere between the fake contract, the public disasters, the motorcycle rides, and the way he still looked at me like I mattered more than anything else in the world, I realized the most terrifying guy at Westbridge University had never really saved me from humiliation at all. He saved me from believing I was impossible to love.